Hello, Allison Norrington, and hello to our audience. Welcome back to the Story Hour, part two of our interview with.
Jason Zada, director, writer, producer, and to some degree pioneer of storytelling for our modern day, I would say. Yeah, welcome back, Jason. Thank you for returning
Thanks. Thank
after
you.
my
Thank you
full
for having
story of my dating life.
me. Yeah, it was a good one. We obviously with more questions, but
I'll wait for the
enough.
movie.
There you
Yeah, okay. Let's move on. So
go.
we left we left last session talking with you about bringing your audience into the story and how you do that so well, understanding platform, understanding audience behavior, understanding calls to actions and triggers.
Mm.
Your latest work is 21 Pilots Never Ending Level of Concern. Had a couple of friends who I think worked on that for you or with you. But I would love for you to explain, in your own words, of course, what it is and what it was, what it means, how it worked.
Yeah. 21 Pilots, the record label, approached me the start of the summer during the pandemic, and everything was shut down, and 21 Pilots had just put out a new single called Level of Concern that was doing really well on the radio. And I was a huge fan of 21 Pilots. Like it's the first band that my teenage daughter and I like we bonded over. Like she grew up listening to 80s music and this and that, so we have very similar tastes, but it was the first like modern band that we were like both in love with. So I was just like, oh wow, everything shut down. It's a pandemic, and I get to work with 21 Pilots, so it was very exciting. And the more that I was thankfully given a pretty amazing opportunity with just like we need something to engage our audience and to get people to talk about the new single and talk about the band. So I had dived. I didn't know this, but they have this massive following online that is just. It's called The Click. They are very active. They do artwork. They are just very like I think probably one of the most passionate fan base I've ever seen for a band. So I just started trying to figure out what would be an interesting way of engaging this audience that, usually they'd go see them at a concert and this and that, and that's how you really stay close with your fans. But they weren't able to tour. So what was a way to engage fans and have some fun knowing that they're all trapped in their houses and couldn't go anywhere? So we came up with this idea that I really wanted to do an ARG. I loved ARGs forever, but it never really properly done one in this sense, where it's mostly takes place online. So we started with an ARG. It's the sort of thing that you don't understand how smart all the fans are until like they collectively put all their brains together, get onto a Discord server, and solve problems that basically work a week in a matter of 10 hours. And these are very complicated ARG pieces. It's basically there was 20 levels of concern that
So
you had to
I'm
go
going to
through.
stop for 1 second on the
Yep.
20 levels. So for those of us that don't know, ARG stands for,
Augmented reality gaming.
and ARGs give the opportunity for people to. I'm sorry, we have to be. There are people who've never heard of this, and we're
Yeah,
telling in different forms of storytelling. So
it's basically the way I looked at it is it's gamifying our current level of playing field of life. Like we're putting a game on top of the existing world. And what we did in an ARG sense was you had to solve puzzles. It's basically puzzle solving and problem solving and trying to move through an interactive story that doesn't really have a start and an end. It's a narrative that's free flowing. It could change. We could adapt it. There's pause breaks there if you want to pause the audience. It's a really interesting layer on top of our existing worlds
And
that you could build.
like other adventures that you have created, people begin to participate at different levels,
Yep.
and those different levels give them something else at stake. There is always something at stake that is driving the narrative forward, and the something is at stake starts out with solving a series of problems, correct?
Correct.
And in this case, and this is what I found most curious about this, is one, the never ending music video, and two, how often it refreshed. Like it was every 3 minutes or something like that.
3 minutes and 51
So can
seconds.
you
Yeah.
explain that process, that integration that had this never ending music video? Again,
So
Jason, Allison sort of buried the lead when she said a somewhat of a pioneer, because this is really, this is pioneering stuff. This is never done before stuff.
yeah, we the never ending music video was the big idea out of everything that we did, but it was the cherry on top, meaning you couldn't get access to the never ending music video. People didn't know it existed during the ARG. So they were unlocking these different levels. Each level got harder and harder and harder. People figured out we created our own symbol system and it basically all these glyphs that meant things and an alphabet. But by the time they got to the 20th sort of level, that was the never-ending music video. So the fans helped unlock the never-ending music video, and that was just a technique that we've done. My technical partner Jason Nickel and I have done a million times in the past as content, but I think the way that we executed it was really interesting. Where we said, what if you could submit your photo, your video, whatever you want to do, to this never-ending music video, and then every 3.5 minutes, a new one is uploaded, and it never ends. And they say, well, how would we do that, without incurring, millions and millions of dollars of server costs and this and that? So we said, well, let's just see if we could do it on YouTube. So we had a conversation with YouTube and said, are we breaking any rules or violating anything if we did like a live stream that never ended? And they're like, no, you could do one as long as you want. So we would render, people would submit their content via a website that we built, and that content that would get compiled very creatively into an animated music video. And then every time, go to URL on YouTube, and it was live URL. Every 3.5 minutes or so, it updated with a brand new version of the music video with all fresh content. And it kept going and going and going until we eventually took it offline, and it did end in a very fun, creative way. And we won the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest music video of all time.
It's amazing. Woo! A couple things here. One is, obviously, people would do that wanting to be acknowledged, wanting to know that they mattered, wanting to know that they could get to see themselves. And maybe people did it over and over and over again. I can imagine that there were power users or power participants who kept uploading and uploading and uploading. But the other thing that I want to point out is that there's this thing that I don't even know that you've established, which is in an ARG of what you've done, you have presented a model for collaboration and cooperation, which, and I don't want to get too heavy and too serious about this, but that kind of level of gamification, the ability to gamify cooperation with a result that is actually something personal, you get personally rewarded. My feeling is that could solve a lot of problems on the planet. Like, even if your life wasn't, the vaccines came so quickly because it was literally was a matter of life or death. But the idea that you could gamify collaboration and cooperation, crowdsourced problem solving, if you will, but with a story behind it, it's like, actually, so Jason, that's kind of my expectation of the next thing you'll do is change the world by being able to work from this foundation, if I'm making any sense.
No, you are. I mean, that's an amazing way of putting it. I mean, what we realized is that the harder that the ARG got, the more there was going to be something. Everybody knew there was going to be something at the end, and they weren't quite sure what it was. And a something that they didn't know about was this. Let's see if you can see it, but it's a custom made level of concern box that we made for about 50 fans. And inside of it is a it's a USB drive, just like they saw online, and they could. I mean, it's a really beautiful keepsake. I think that they knew that something was coming. They didn't know what it was, but it was we suggested very strongly, when you get to the end, don't leak the codes. What they would do, everyone was working together at such rapid rates that every single time they'd solve a code, it would go up on the Discord server, it'd go up on Reddit, it'd go up on Twitter, it'd go up on everywhere. And instead of it being things that, like, we were hoping that people would, not hoping, but we were expecting that people would be like, okay, once I get to that certain level where we're not unlocking these things every 10 minutes, I know something, we're getting to an end. It's like this, pyramid that's going up, and at some point they're going to stop sharing codes, but they wouldn't do it. They kept going, and it was this very I mean, I love what you said about, problem solving for the world. I mean, what was really interesting is if you get enough smart, passionate people together, especially fans that are rabid and want new content, the collaboration was incredible. Like, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, we had some really smart people working on this ARG, but it's still like, whatever we did, they solved it quick.
This
and that yeah.
This
Sorry.
has so many applications to so many different things. For example, Dave Gallo, oceanographer, historian on the Titanic. We've been working on a project for years, and his fondest wish was crowdsourced discovery within the wreck. Being able to give people access all over the world and a problem to figure out. I would love to see, and I don't know how you would do this, Jason, but just a sociological case study of this 21 pilots, levels of concern, I mean, I think that's like a Harvard case study. The idea of people's behavior around collaborative problem solving within a story world. I mean, I think that's simply brilliant.
I think that's the key within a story world. I think there's something that feels like a disconnect. Like, I think when we talk to like playologists and experience designers, and because it doesn't feel real, there's so many causes now, so many of them that are absolutely important. People are overwhelmed because they can only get behind so much before they're emotionally exhausted. And there's something that feels like play, and it feels like a disconnect, and it feels like recreation to step into a story world. So I think the first thing would have to be that it doesn't feel like a cause. If you can then blend the behavior that you've seen happen, Jason, into something that does translate or does kind of jump off or leapfrog into something else, I reckon that's got to be the technique, surely.
But you will then get people, obviously you'll get people who are cause related, but it extends to people who would rather game but don't know about the cause, but then would be educated. We could go on this track forever, and because our time is limited, and we're not going to be selling this particular episode by dropping an NFT. I would love for our audience to begin. I saw you roll your eyes, Allison Norrington. I would love for us to begin to discuss what non-fungible tokens are. And the whole world is talking about it. There's so much hype around it. I mean, you can't swing a cat in Clubhouse. Oh, wait, now I'm going to be canceled for swinging a cat. You can't swing a cat in Clubhouse without hitting an NFT discussion. So, Jason, tell us.
NFTs.
What it means to storytellers.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I first heard about it. Obviously we've all started. I really started hearing a lot about it kind of December-ish, beginning of January. And that's, I mean, I think that's where everyone started to, like kind of the last few months have been crazy, and it mostly because of the sales that have been going on. People selling for almost $70 million his artwork. And, he's an art. I mean, he's an interesting one because he's an artist that's been working every day creating artwork for like 15 years and finally is getting paid for it. So, for me, the NFT, it was a hard thing to, like, I probably made the wrong mistake. I didn't just jump in right away, and I normally don't. I really sort of take a step back and observe and watch and just soak in as much as I can. And one of the things that I did with this was like really, really just I'm on every single platform, and I was just observing like what was selling, what was working, this and that. And I was like, there's got to be more to this than just that art side. And then you started to see the NBA Top Shots come in, and what they were doing is they were taking the idea of physical trading cards, but making them digital and tradable. And those, I mean, people have been struggling, like they've been trying to figure that out for decades at this point. Topps is jumping in, who makes all the baseball cards. They're jumping in with baseball cards at the end of the month. So all these physical goods, Funko's, going to make digital line of these things. So people are, it started as just digital art. Now there's this idea of physical things that are being translated to digital. But for me, the most interesting part about it is the idea that we're starting to put a value upon digital goods, and that value, the comparison I make is that when I could buy an album from a music album from Apple. Now I own that album technically, but I could only listen to that album if I'm on Apple's hardware or software and it authenticates me. So it's kind of already like a mini version of an NFT, except it's a very, very limited version of an NFT, meaning I can only listen to that album if I have my iPhone and I have iTunes and it connects to the server and it pings it and it says, okay, yeah, you own that album, you could stream it. I think if you could think about the potential of if I could go directly to that artist and purchase that album, and it goes into my wallet, my NFT wallet, and then I can play that album in Fortnite. I could play it on Apple. I could play it anywhere I want because I own that album outright as a digital asset. That, for me, was this little light that went on in my head about where we're going to go in the future is in terms of connecting digital assets with like a tangible value that's not locked to just one ecosystem.
I just want to go back for 2 seconds. So NFT is based on the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
Blockchain is a fully integrous platform that's able to track transactions in a secure manner that can't be hacked, supposedly. So basically provenance, if we're talking about art. Who's owned it and where it's going. Now, when you talk about a digital asset having value, digital assets can be easily copied. So the question becomes, how do you secure the digital asset so that it can't be copied? The other thing is that investment groups, if you will, much like I could own one Bitcoin with Allison and she could own $30,000 of it and I could own the other 30,000. I don't know if it's hit today, but then you could actually own pieces of that digital asset as well. So a single person could own it exclusively, or that person could then, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, once I own it, I could sell shares in that asset. And if the artist dies, just like regular art, the asset becomes more valuable. Am I correct in that assumption?
I actually don't know the answer to that. If you could, all I know is the thing that I find really interesting is that you could transfer sale of that asset to anyone by purchasing it, by trading it, whatever you want to do, and that's tracked via the blockchain, like you said. So the interesting thing becomes, that some assets are 1-to-1, some of them are additions of 20. But I think owning that particular asset, the thing that's really interesting is when I own it, it's like on the blockchain, I'm the person that owns that. It says that everywhere because it's all tied back to one thing. But I think for me, what I'm finding interesting is this idea that, if you like, we're talking about art right now for a lot of NFTs, but I think we're starting to see it move into a lot of different categories where people are selling digital sneakers. And they're super like this. If anybody knows anything about the sneaker world, it's its own NFT market. It's like it's a crazy, like, people will spend insane amounts of money. Kids that don't even have that much money will save up their money and spend insane amounts of money for a limited
I've got a
edition
question.
sneaker.
I've got
So
this question, Jason. I've got to go here, right? So when I think about this, I can understand and I can see the parallel between what happened with the music industry. At least from my perspective, Apple was a big like push for that, right?
mhm,
Because we went from owning vinyl and cassettes and CDs and
yeah,
whatever to actually having music essentially in the cloud, right? And it felt kind of weird at first, but Apple's products really helped to let you see your library of content. And I love what you said in terms of owning music like through with an NFT model makes sense because you can then use that track in anything else that you want to do. I get it. In terms of owning digital art, like I don't get it.
yeah.
And I get it because I feel like art is something to be like displayed or looked at. And I think there's so much digital content that we're used to being free. People can screenshot stuff all over the place and they're not allowed to do it, but they do, right? So if you own digital art, then how and where can you display it? And like how does that work? How like are you just looking at it on your screen? I can see then a business model in terms of like Brian said, people buying shares in that one thing, and then there being an exclusivity to you owning that piece of art. So I kind of can start getting my head around that. Digital sneakers, I just don't get it. Like what am I missing? Because you can't even wear them, can you?
Well, okay, so this is where it gets interesting. This is where it starts moving into the conversation of the metaverse.
Okay.
As we've all been locked down for a year, I think a lot of the younger generation has spent a lot of time online in metaverse communities. I mean, Fortnite is the prime example. I mean, I don't know any kid besides my kid who will not play Fortnite, goes into Minecraft and things like that. But they spend a lot of time and a lot of money doing digital transactions within these metaverses. So one of the interesting things are, why would you buy that digital sneaker?
Right.
Well, if you could buy that digital sneaker and your avatar could wear it in Minecraft and you could show it off,
Okay.
then it's a pretty big deal. Now that's all not there right now, but it's gonna move there for sure. Our avatars, I was reading that article about Mark Zuckerberg is making a huge bet on avatars, and I think everyone is making big bets on AR and VR. Once again, VR over the next kind of couple years, because I think this layer of overlay on top of our existing world is a metaverse that we're going to do with AR, but then all these little tiny slash large communities of people in these existing gamified metaverses are all they're I think I was reading an article that said that I believe that the digital goods marketplace right now within all these metaverse worlds is about a $10 billion market, with 1 billion of that being done within Fortnite.
That's insane.
And the
That
very same principles hold in the digital world of status,
Yeah.
of wealth, of all of, sadly, all of that. And so being able to buy that designer couch, being able to build your own house, it's like taking high fidelity. I don't know what's happening to high fidelity, but the whole digital goods marketplace. But one other aspect is the ability to have an NFT that can then be put into a 3D printer so that
Yeah.
you can actually buy a design and create that design. And maybe there are parameters on that design for you so that you can only reproduce one. And these ability to limit, I think the possibilities are endless. And like any industry, I mean, we watched it going back to storytelling. we watched it with interactive television, we watched it with transmedia storytelling, and we watched it in the first few years of VR. You get this excitement, you get this people rushing in to take advantage of what they think is going to be explosive. And
Yeah.
then as that falls away, what you're left with is people who really know what they're doing and people who are there, therefore committed to building an industry. So I
Yeah.
think we're in this, and it's all super accelerated right now.
Oh yeah.
So it's very interesting to watch. It's also very interesting to watch. Jason, I'd love to know what you think about this. And unfortunately, we're running out of time. But when you look at NFTs, now we're talking about personal, talking about consumer to consumer or business to consumer. But enterprise NFTs, whole different field,
Yeah.
whole different way to play. Because you look at, if you watch the takeoff curve for say AR and VR in enterprise, much faster
Mhm.
than with consumers.
Yeah.
And much more experimental and much more because they've got real problems to solve. No offense to
Yeah.
entertainment and storytelling, but industry has
And
real
money.
problems to solve. So the idea that enterprise NFT could lead the way, I'd like to know your thoughts on that.
I haven't really thought much about the enterprise side of it. I mean, I think I mean, for sure, are they is that whole community gonna make everything from I mean, I was like, God, like, what if you get an employee of the month badge as an NFT, and you could show it off. I mean, I think our ability to show off digital goods in the real world is going to increase tremendously. I've heard about a museum already that's going to be dedicated to NFTs, so you could display digital art. There's a lot of art galleries already do that, but I think that one of the things to think about, and this totally doesn't answer your question, but I think um, what I'm banking on right now is this idea of an experience being an NFT.
Oh, brilliant.
What if I could take an experience and put it into an NFT, and then basically that's my token or my ticket into the experience, and I think
That,
that that
see, that's who you are. That
that,
is
that
freaking brilliant. Because when you look, especially if I look to China now, it's not about goods with that next generation. It is about experiences. So that
yeah.
generation, fortunately, have had the opportunity to work a lot there. That generation is, oh yeah, we'll own the Fendi bag, we'll own that, we'll own the designer, but it's the experience that we want to have. We want to
Yeah.
travel, we want to experience different locations, we want to jump into VR and experience things. So, Jason, that is like, is that what's in store? Is that what you
Well,
You,
can't talk
I
about?
think
Are you
I
already
think
doing that?
so. I mean, I think that right before the pandemic, the biggest thing in the advertising world that was making everybody super happy to spend lots of money on was experiential. Like everybody wanted to create some big, crazy, elaborate experience at Comic-Con or this or that. And I think that one thing that we've seen over the last year plus now has been, this push to move a lot of those experiences online. And like, do I have to go to a conference in person or can I attend it digitally? So I think this move, and if you look at, unfortunately, I do way too much research sometimes during the day, and I'm just like, I was looking at, Apple's plan is like a 10-year plan. They haven't announced it yet, but it's like you look at all the patents that they've been filing. I mean, they're going to come out with VR glasses, then AR glasses that look like normal glasses, and then they're going to be, um, you know, um, what are they called? The things you put into your eye. Contact
Lynn?
contact lenses that will be overlays. So, all this stuff is coming. All this stuff is coming. And the one thing that is really interesting to think about is that people are always really love and a good experience, and whether that's like going into, you're saying like the high end goods, like the experience of going into a Louis Vuitton and buying a Louis Vuitton bag or whatever it's an experience, it's something that people who have that status love to do. People who go to Disneyland, that's an experience. All these things. So to me, it makes natural sense that the NFT market will eventually be very, very much about collecting experiences.
Well, what's
So
great
I know
is
Jason.
we have you on the record saying this. So when it all happens, we just point back to you.
I mean, it's who knows what's going to happen. It's such a fast moving thing, but I think at least the one takeaway I will say about it is that we're in this really incredible golden age of story right now, where there's all these possibilities as a storyteller, and the NFT thing, we're I think everybody's squinting their eyes because we're looking at it at a very sort of very small lens of what it eventually I'm hoping that it will become.
Well, you know what? I know we're running out of time, but I've got two things I want to say. One is, Jason, I know you're writing about this. Where can people find the output of your brilliant brain online?
I've been putting up things that I write on Medium, so you could find me on Medium. I think
Just your name, just Jason
yeah,
Zada on me.
Jason Zada. Yeah, on Medium. So it's weird. I have to sort of I've been using writing as an output of like just trying to make sense of some of these things that are happening right now, because the more I have been doing research and playing with them, and I'm very involved in the NFT community right now, and we're doing a bunch of drops, and I've learned so much about the marketplace. The more that I'm going, wait a second, there's so much more here than we're realizing. So I hope to share at least some of that with everyone.
I think that's great. So I think you've got a very brilliant and unique view on how people react and respond and how to continually push boundaries of storytelling. And I think for me, from our conversation, whether it's looking at Elf Yourself or whether it's looking at Take This Lollipop, whichever version you play, through to 21 Pilots, and now our conversation on NFTs, you do something that I try to preach a lot to storytellers, and so many find it difficult to do this. And that is the famous Maya Angelou quote that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And whether we're talking about all of those things across your platforms, that's what you do. And if I had a hat, it'd go off to you.
Oh, thank you.
Just keep doing what you're doing. You're really like at the coal face of pushing boundaries, and you don't do it for ego. You don't do it for accolade. You do it because you flipping love it. And I think you've just got that curious brain. You just want to keep pushing it. So what a perfect situation to be in. Thank you so much. Such a brilliant conversation.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. That was very kind. And yeah, I'd never stop being curious is what I always, it's like, I didn't create that. I think like Steve Jobs said that, but it's like, always be curious, always keep pushing those buttons.
Brilliant.
Thank you. We have been so honored to have you today and last week. And I have a feeling we'll be having you back. I already would like to have a conversation with you in Clubhouse on what is the metaverse. We haven't even started to cover that yet. I think that would be great for our listeners there. Jason Zada, thank you so much for joining us today. Allison Norrington, how great to have you as a playmate and to be able to explore story worlds with you. It's like we say in Yiddish, besher, meant to be. So
love it.
Thank you all for watching and listening to the Story Hour, and we will see you next time.